let's get into a couple of key games from the NHL last night. It is getting into crunch time in the NHL and a couple of big games in the National Hockey League last night with a couple of big performances. Let's start with the Vancouver Canucks, a monster performance that they needed in a big-time way. They are now 5 points clear of the Edmonton Oilers for top spot in the Pacific Division. Edmonton does have 2 games in hand, but you feel a whole lot better about 5 points up with 2 games in hand than 3 points up with 2 games in hand. And now word out of Edmonton is Connor McDavid, a little bit banged up day to day, but maybe he gets rested down the stretch now if that top spot is just a little bit more out of reach. So we'll see. It's still... if they win both of them, it's still a 1-point edge. So we'll see. But this is just, cannot stress how big of a win this is for the Canucks. So how did they get it? Offensively, a lot of the focus is Garland, Miller, and Joshua. They drove a lot of this on the offensive side. For Garland and Joshua, they've been a part of the energy for the Canucks all season long. They've had a couple of different line mates there, but overall, these 2 guys have really been able to bring it on the offensive side of things this season, and that has allowed for the big players to kind of keep that momentum going, but it's allowed for the Canucks to be able to roll quite a few lines. I mentioned around the trade deadline time, when everyone's clicking on this team, this might be the deepest forward unit in the National Hockey League. It's just so good what they're able to do. And now Miller, who's having probably his best run with the Canucks, steps in between the middle, and you have a legitimate scoring line now with this group that you feel really, really comfortable in throwing them out there in these offensive situations. And Garland, he ends up getting a couple of goals in this game, helping to provide a spark for a Canuck team that really needed it. And it's not just like rush down the wing, shot scores. It's winning battles in front, getting to loose pucks, creating opportunities, and putting them in the back of the net. The Canuck power play has got a lot of focus, as it has certainly fallen off from the breakneck pace it was on at the beginning of the season. But you feel now like, yes, was that run they were on at the beginning of the year unsustainable? Of course it was. Is this still a really dangerous power play? Of course it is. And the big weapon up top is Quinn Hughes' shot. And he had one big shot that led to a couple of scoring opportunities, and he has another big shot that leads to a goal that helps the Canucks in this game. And so for teams going up against the Canucks, you are going to have to mind yourself, because this power play, while it's fallen off a little bit, is still an absolute weapon for Vancouver. And I think the big thing for the Canucks in this game, they were down 2-0, 2 shots in from Vegas. The Canucks have not had good goaltending since Demko went down with an injury, which you can understand. But it's a good thing they built up that cushion in the Pacific, because it does seem like they're going to need every bit of it coming here down the stretch. And we talked on the last show about how important home ice advantage is going to be for Vancouver if they want to get that top spot in the Pacific Division. They're going to need Demko to be back and ready to go right for the beginning, because this goaltending issue is not going away with these 2 backups. And those were a couple real backbreakers for Vancouver. But credit the Canucks for being able to bounce back after a couple real devastating goals and work their way back into it and kind of control things against Vegas. I thought even at 2-0, it was like, man, Vancouver has felt like the better team in this game, and eventually they're able to show it. For Vegas, they just looked all right. Obviously, there are some reinforcements coming, and the top players look great. Eichel gets a couple. Marchessault with a real good setup on a real rough defensive play by Soucy, who is having more of those as what we get later into this season, kind of bringing up again the point of maybe Vancouver should have gone and got another defenseman. One of the ones who I thought they maybe should have got scored in this game, as Hanifin is able to put one in on a not great goal allowed by Vancouver goaltending. But reinforcements are coming. I don't think it's time to panic for Vegas or anything like that. It's interesting. A loss here means that they are still in line to play Vancouver in the first round of the playoffs. So a little bit interesting there. The other big game of the night, it was the Pittsburgh Penguins special teams letting them down. They get a very important point out of this game against Toronto, but they had a real opportunity to get a couple. The power play goes 0 for 5 last night, and it just felt like the offense would build up some momentum. They get a power play, and it just stops. And another power play, and it just stops. And another power play, and then Marner gets a breakaway, and then Toronto gets a power play. They were able to create a couple of chances off it. Samsonov was able to make a couple of big saves in this game, but this power play is now 3 for its last 30, and that just sets you back. When the margin for error is so thin, to be able to get those goals while you have an advantage and only need to score 1 or 2 even strength goals in a game, it just makes life so much easier. So that power play needs to get figured out. But Crosby and Malkin were really impressive in this game. Malkin, a good steal from Lyubushkin, setting up a Raquel goal. Crosby had a couple of really good setups and won a puck battle that led to the O'Connor goal last night. Both those guys are 100% leading this team in a tremendous direction, and they continue to be the sentimental favorite. Big game tonight in the East with Detroit taking on Washington. And lastly, on the hockey note, Matthews gets his 65th of the year, kind of tying a modern-day record with Alex Ovechkin. It's just absurd what this guy is doing. And the goal last night, he's off of his back foot, fires a one-timer that you would shoot at the end of warm-up and you're just dicking around, and it goes like 95 miles an hour into the back of the net. He is incredibly talented, and it has been just a treat to watch this guy do what he has been doing this season. And look, I know we love to make fun of Toronto, and okay, well, this team not going to prove anything to me in the regular season. We got to see it in the playoffs. If that is your mentality, A, for the whole Toronto team, you're probably not far off. But B, I do think if you're just writing it off as, oh, another regular season for Toronto, LOL, you are really doing yourself a disservice, because this is something really special that is happening right now. And I get that there's frustration with how the Leafs are covered. And whenever there's an MVP board, it's the top 3 of Kucherov, McDavid, and McKinnon. And then Sportsnet will try to just kind of shoehorn in like, oh, but don't forget about Matthews. Don't forget. And it can be absurdly annoying, but that still shouldn't discount what an incredible season this guy is having. And just one more note, like, there are some monster goal scoring seasons this year, right? I do think, like, because we're getting a bunch of 50 and this one in the 60s, it makes 40 seem a little less impressive. But Draisaitl getting 40 for the 5th year in a row and Besser getting to 40 goals this year, I think are accomplishments that both should be looked at and applauded. Draisaitl for just the absolute machine that he is, and Besser for his ability to bounce back and really kind of maximize the talents that we all thought he could have. He has been, I think, a real X factor in getting the Canucks to a spot where they are in the driver's seat for top spot in the Pacific with a couple weeks left in the regular season. So the hockey season carries on. The playoffs are going to be a blast, but these last couple of weeks are going to be just as fun. Hopefully you think this show is fun. If you're listening in podcast form, make sure you subscribe and leave a review. If you're watching, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment.